Hello and welcome to CGTN's special coverage of China's National Memorial Day for the victims of the Nanjing Massacre. 87 years ago, Japanese troops invaded the city of Nanjing on December the 13th. More than 300,000 Chinese civilians were killed in 6 weeks. In 2014, Chinese lawmakers designated December the 13th as a day to remember and honor those killed in this horrific event in history. As of this year, the number of registered Nanjing Massacre survivors has dwindled to just 32. There will be a ceremony soon at the Memorial Hall for the victims of the Nanjing Massacre in East China's Jiangsu province. And commemorations will also take place across the country as well. And now CGTN's Zhou Jiaxin has more from Nanjing about that.
As we approach the solemn memorial ceremony, a crowd of massacre survivor, descendants of victims and other attendees have gathered outside the memorial hall of the victims of the Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders. And according to the schedule, the ceremony will include singing the national anthem, public mourning, and wreath laying. Representatives will read a declaration of peace, striking the bell of peace, then the releasing of white doves. And during the public mourning, siren will blare citywide, and vehicles will come to a halt, honking for 1 minute. And in recent years, Nanjing has made significant efforts to organize memorial events to ensure that this history is not forgotten. And early this month, survivors and descendants of victims gathered at the memorial hall to pay tribute to their loved ones in front of the Wailing Wall engraved with the names of victims. And through Friday morning activities and peace-themed assemblies are being held across the city and abroad. And in July, Nanjing University organized a memorial event in Berlin to honor the staff member of a German company, Siemens, who once helped establish an international safety zone with other foreigners during the massacre, protecting Chinese civilians. Along these foreigners, American professor Charles Henry Riggs was awarded a jade medal by the Chinese government. And this May, Mr. Riggs' 4 descendants visit Nanjing and donated valuable relics and historical materials, including a copy of letter detailing the atrocities and the plight of refugees. And these items are critical pieces of evidence documenting war crimes. And since the 1980s, the Memorial Hall has collected over 1,000 sets of relics, including battlefield journals of Japanese infantry and rear photos of the Unit 6044, which carried out biological warfare experiments. And these artifacts served as living testimonies to that frigid winter when one of the most barbaric chapters of World War II unfolded. And this history stands as a stark warning that such atrocities must never happen again. And it reminds us that peace in our times requires relentless effort and collaboration across cultures.
Well, in the winter of 1937, an estimated 300,000 Chinese in the eastern city of Nanjing were killed by Japanese soldiers over a period of months. And the incident during the Japanese Army's 14-year occupation of China is known as the Nanjing Massacre, or the Rape of Nanjing. It's one of the worst crimes against humanity in history. Gao Yiming tells us more.
In 1931, the Imperial Japanese Army invaded Manchuria in northeast China, occupying vast swaths of land there. From 1931 to 1945, some 35 million casualties were recorded as Japan expanded its military action. The Japanese war policy was plunder, kill, and burn, and this was given full play in December 1937, when it seized the eastern city of Nanjing, the then capital of the Republic of China. According to the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal in 1947, more than 300,000 people were massacred over the course of 6 weeks. Most of them were civilians. Nearly 20,000 rapes were recorded. Countless women were tortured and killed, and many were forced into sex slavery. Many Japanese nationalists and historians have downplayed the massacre, saying it was exaggerated or even fabricated. But these atrocities were tried by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East and the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal. Both passed verdicts acknowledging the incident based on the evidence presented at the hearings. Dozens of mass graves have been discovered over the decades. In 1998, more than 60 years later, the remains of 208 people were recovered from a relatively small grave. In 2014, the Chinese government designated December the 13th, the day Nanjing fell, as a National Memorial Day. The following year, UNESCO listed records of the massacre in the memory of the World Register.
For some insights into the Nanjing Massacre, in our studio we have Associate Professor Xia Lu with the School of Marxism in the Marxism Studies at Renmin University of China. Professor Xia, welcome to welcome to our special coverage on Nanjing Massacre. As time passes, a number of the Nanjing Massacre survivors continue to dwindle, as we just mentioned. And as far as I know, 6 more survivors passed away in 2024, leaving the number of the survivors remaining as of December the 1st as 32 now. What can we learn from this part of history with regards to wars, peace, and humanity, with less and less survivors still being with us, telling us the story about that atrocity?
Well, I think one of the most urgent messages that we can learn from this declining number of survivors is that we have to try to do our best to save the history, because less and less people know this history, and less people remember the history. So we need to try to save this kind of history. And also, we also need to know that the wars, all this kind of the warfare, do not bring do not bring anything good to the human society. And also this kind of a peace actually is valuable as jewelry, as valuable as our kind of the eye. So we should protect the peaceful life and all this kind of stable life that now we are having. So that's what we can learn from this information. Yeah. Right,
but in some, we have to realize that in some parts of the international community, this atrocity is the Nanjing Massacre has been downplayed to a violence of war instead of an atrocity against humanity. So in that case, there are still a lot of people who are maybe not very familiar with the Nanjing Massacre itself. So could you please tell us the historical importance of this?
Yes, actually, this is not only, let's say, a war event or war activity in the modern history, particularly modern Chinese history, and it is a kind of a collective crime against the humanity, because those kind of soldiers who fought in the war did not respect the rules. First, they did not respect the rules of the war, because we know that wars are basically, they were actually in prehistory, wars were also the game of nobles. Even if you don't like those people, you fought the war, you should respect the rules, you should fight by the rule. However, those people, those soldiers fought in this war did not respect any rules. And for example, they shouldn't kill the people who are crossing the river. They shouldn't kill the people who are protecting other people. They shouldn't kill people who have already lost the capacity to resist, right? But those soldiers who fought, the Japanese soldiers who fought in this war, still did this kind of thing. So they're not only about the war activity, they were kind of violating the international this kind of rules. So I think that's the most important thing we should learn from this event, and that's what we should alert the rest of the world, that it was not only a kind of a war activity, it was a very, very serious violation of international convention. Back then, this kind of international convention was already been agreed by most of the international society.
All right, let's go live to the Memorial Hall of the Victims of the Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders. The ceremony is underway to mourn the victims.
The National Memorial Ceremony for the Nanjing Massacre victims now begins. Sing the national anthem. Please join me to pay tribute to Nanjing Massacre victims. And of silent tribute. Let us lay wreaths for the victims.
I'd like to invite a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, and Mr. Li Shulei, also the head of the Publicity Department of CPC Central Committee, to deliver a speech. Compatriots, comrades and friends, today we gather here solemnly to deeply commemorate the victims of the Nanjing Massacre. Remember the compatriots who were killed by the Japanese invaders. Commemorate the revolutionary martyrs and national heroes who sacrificed their lives for the victory of the Chinese people's war of resistance against the Japanese aggression, and cherish the memory of the international soldiers who gave their lives together with the Chinese people in the fight against the Japanese aggressions. And this is also show that the Chinese people firmly adhere to the lofty aspiration of following the path of peaceful development. In 1931, Japanese militarists blazingly launched the September 18 incidents occupied northeast China. In 1937, they deliberately staged the July 7 incident and launched a full-scale war of aggression against China. On December 13, 1937, the Japanese invaders barbarously invaded Nanjing and committed the horrific Nanjing Massacre, shocking the world, in which 300,000 compatriots were brutally killed, leaving the darkest page in the history of civilization. This is an appalling crime against humanity, and the cruel acts of the Japanese aggressors also got their historical conclusions and legal conclusions about the fascist atrocities. And the evidence is irrefutable and cannot be tampered with. In order to resist the brutal aggression of Japanese militarism and save the country, the Communist Party of China took the lead in fighting against the aggression. After 14 years' arduous struggle, the Chinese people, at the heavy cost of more than 35 million casualties, supported the war against the fascists, defeated the Japanese militarist aggressors, and also made major contributions to the victory of the world anti-fascist war. Compatriots, comrades, and friends, this year marks the 10th anniversary of the National Memorial Day for the victims of Nanjing Massacre. 10 years ago, President Xi Jinping declared to the world that the history should be remembered and a stimulus moving forward, and we also cherish the peace. We host the ceremony to commemorate the victims, also to show that we remember the history, never forget the past, and cherish peace and create a bright future. This is also showcase that the Communist Party of China and the people will carry forward the spirit of the ancestors and also write a new chapter for the country. We should be united and also to gather the mighty force to stand up to the challenges. During the dark time, the Communist Party of China united the people of the country, worked together and fight together against aggressors, and finally won the war. And the history is proved that without the CPC, there would be no victory of the war and there would be no new China. Right now, the world has seen increasing changes and seen in the century to realize the China's national rejuvenation right now also entering into a critical moment. Right now we're facing the opportunities and the challenges at the same time. With the firm leadership of the CPC and also guided by the Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era, we're full of confidence to overcome the difficulties as long as the 1.4 billion Chinese people united and work for the same direction, we will win the battle because we know how to fight and we also adapt to the fight. And we will also open new horizons for our endeavors, and our great nation will be prosperous and strong. We should also carry forward self-confidence and to also strive for innovation. The arduous struggle against Japanese aggressors also that's a great journey for us to free the country. As the party and the people choose to embark on the independent journey, so that's the destiny firmly in our own hand. And also we could see one after another victory in terms of a country's development. Chinese path to modernization is also the great avenue for China to build a strong country and represent the direction of development. And also at the third plenary session of the party's 20th Century Central Committee, we also adopted a resolution to further deepen reform comprehensively to advance Chinese modernization. And we should also blaze the path to search the role that fits in our condition and also to further reform the institutions and make sure that the China's modernization could help us to open up the brighter future. We must affirm, safeguard justice and peace. Chinese people are those who love peace. And that is also the defining feature of the Chinese people since the modern times. For the Chinese people that had bullied and suffered by the aggressors, but we not really learned their logic. Like the bigger bullying the weaker, but we still love peace, and that is also our mindset. Right now in the world, the Cold War mentality still lingering, but we know that the cooperation could not be stopped. And China would like to work with other countries to be the practitioner of the cooperation and also the participant of the civilization exchanges, and also to promote the mutual learning and also to implement the global development initiative, global the security initiative and global civilization initiative in order to build a better world for all. China and Japan are neighbors, connected by rivers. And the two countries should also pursue the right path that fulfill the interest of the people in both countries. Both sides should stick to the friends to each other, not not really the conflict incited to each other, and we should also to build a constructive, stable China-Japan relations. Compatriots, comrades, friends, we should never forget the history moving forward and should also to open great prospects. Let us rally closer around the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and we work as one and forge ahead with the goal of building a great modern socialist country in all respects and advancing the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, and also to make new and greater contribution to the noble cause of peace and development of mankind.
Nanjing
Youth representatives now read out Ode of Peace. Relentlessly, the Yangtze River passes the majestic city of Nanjing. Haplessly, a tragedy befell the ancient city on December 13, 1937. Recklessly, the Japanese invaders filled the Yangtze River with the blood of our people. Miserably, 300,000 of our brethren perished in the abyss in 6 weeks. Angrily, the plum trees blossomed to echo the outrage felt by all mankind. Deeply, we mourn the heavy blows on our civilization for 100 years. Regrettably, our weak nation languished from troubles, domestic and foreign. Resolutely, we fought to liberate ourselves and build a prosperous nation. Definitely, the obstacles in the past only make us stronger in the future. Vigorously, our nation recovers from the shadows 87 years ago. Earnestly, our friends from China and abroad gather at the 2024 National Memorial Ceremony. Solemnly, we remember our dead and write a new chapter for our living. Justly, we go about the reconstruction of a nation in prosperity and harmony. Peacefully, we endeavor to begin a new age of national rejuvenation. Fondly, we will remember the past to inspire our young for eternity. Remember the past to inspire our young for eternity. We will remember the past to inspire our young for eternity. National memorial ceremony for the Nanjing Massacre victims now concludes. Please visit the exhibition on the historical facts of the Nanjing Massacre.
Well, that was the ceremony underway mourning the victims of the Nanjing Massacre happened in 1937. On the ceremony, the member of Political Bureau, Li Shulei, he's also the head of the Publicity Department of Central Committee of CPC, delivered a speech honoring all the victims of the Nanjing Massacre, calling back the history of the Nanjing Massacre and the Japanese aggression in China, as well as calling on all the Chinese people to remember the history, meanwhile continue to strive harder for the prosperity of China. And he also described China's relations with Japan nowadays should be based on remembering the historical fact while developing a benign and mutual beneficial relations. And now let's get back to our guest, Mr. Xia Lu from Renmin University. Well, we just heard young people citing the ode to peace. I want to cite one of the sentences they mentioned. Think of a potential risk makes a person wise, and hardships may awaken a nation. But the question is, must humanity pay the price of disaster and sacrifice and atrocities even like this to understand the importance of peace?
Well, actually, this is a very good question. We live in a long history, but people tend to forget the history. So what we are now doing, this great and solemn event, is try to revive people's memory and try to tell people that we should not forget about history, because history will disappear if we do nothing. History will disappear if we do not save it, if we do not save the narrative, if we do not save what happened before. So I think to safeguard the peace in the future, well, first thing we need to do is to tell the people, especially to educate the younger generation, that what we have endured, particularly for Chinese people, for Chinese youngsters, to tell them in modern history, Chinese people and Chinese nation, what kind of disaster, what kind of a bad period, what kind of a tragic period we have endured, and then to learn from this lesson. We should not dwell on the past. We should be, self-strengthened, self-improved to become more let's say, with more advantage, become stronger and stronger, so that we could protect not only ourselves, but to protect the international community. So this is I think, one of the information message that should be delivered from the speeches and also the ode to the peace.
Right. And what lessons do you think this kind of a memorial event would have on people's consciousness of building a peaceful world today with a shared future?
Yes, first of all, we should respect the history, because history is history. History just happened. People could not just refute to recognize or refute to affirm that history. History is history. We should respect, and also we should respect the victim. We should respect the people who sacrifice their life for saving the common people or saving the nation. We should respect all these kind of people who sacrifice their life. And also, we should respect, the Chinese national, identity, and also the spirit, showcased in this kind of a whole process. And that's what we think.
Well, do you think this kind of spirit, do you think it can serve as a wake-up call, or as we are facing more and more conflicts in today's world? What does it mean to today's world order?
Yes, of course. Difficulties are always there, like what President Xi mentioned in his speech. We have now encountering different kind of challenges and even difficulties, even more serious than 80 years ago or even 100 years ago. So what we are now doing is not to kind of be scared away or be frightened by these kind of difficulties. We should be confident that all these kind of difficulties could be and will be overcome by Chinese people and by this kind of spirit, and that's what we can learn from this great event.
So you think that this kind of memorial event would transcend the border of China and into the whole international community as a wake-up call of how we should build a more peaceful world based on the historical lessons. In the face of extreme violence, the humanitarian acts of individuals, like some international witnesses in 1937 in Nanjing, actually stood out. How do you think the international effort can help build a peaceful world?
Well, I think first of all, for now, we should first of all we should abandon those kind of the old-fashioned this kind of way of thinking, to think about the international structure, to think about the international community. It's not always I'm sorry. It's not always a kind of a zero-sum game. You know, for the future, in the future, well, the humanity should work together. It's not always a zero-sum game because we are facing the common kind of challenges like those kind of atmosphere, like those kind of the climate change, like those kind of the pandemic thing. So we should work together to cooperate rather than to compete with each other, because if there's only one people living on this earth, then there will be no future. So people should cherish what we are having now and looking forward for the future rather than dwelling on the past or on this kind of tensions.
I like what you said, actually. Remember history, but don't dwell on it. We move forward.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Xia Lu from Renmin University. And that is the end of today's special coverage on the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Day ceremony in China. I'm Li Dongning in Beijing. Thanks for watching and stay with CGTN.